What you expect is what you get.
That was awesome. Welcome to our presentation.
Why should we care? Currently, we're all students, meaning that we have superiors. So it may be interesting for us to find out how their expectations can lead to changes in our performance. In the future, many of us plan to work in the healthcare field. Like, I'm a nursing major, she's a bio major, she's a nursing major.
I'm communications disorders.
It is important for us to know information from the study so that we can alter our expectations to avoid the self-fulfilling prophecy that would affect the outcomes of patients.
Did it change? No, it didn't. Yeah. I don't know where that one is. How does this relate to today's class? Well, yesterday we talked about middle childhood and how physical and cognitive development as well as personality and social development occur a lot in middle childhood and how they can be related to school. And this experiment was performed on middle-aged children. Children in the middle childhood, I don't know, words, something like that. But our report was scheduled for today because it focuses on how authoritative figures influence how kids develop cognitively as well as academically and sometimes with personality. It's still not changing. Oh, it's going backwards. Okay. The background, this was first seen with a horse called Clever Hans, owned by Wilhelm von Osten, who appeared to be able to count, but he was instead trained to watch the speaker, because what would happen is the speaker would say, hey, can you count to 12? And then they would instinctively look at the hoof that was supposed to stamp on the ground and count to 12, and the horse knew that when he looked at the hoof to start stamping, and then when he hit maybe 10 or 11, the person speaking would look back up and the horse knew to stop. So the horse couldn't actually count, he just knew when to start and to stop. And that was called the experimenter expectancy effect, in that you expect the horse to be able to count, so the horse is then kind of able to count. And then Rosenthal did a similar experiment after this with college students and lab rats, where he told his college students that some of these rats were really smart, some of them were really stupid, when in fact the lab rats are all the same. And the college students who were put with the supposedly really smart lab rats found that their rats made it through the mazes faster and more efficiently than the college students who were put with the not as smart but still just as smart lab rats. And it was purely the students' expectations that were changing how the rats performed. Yeah.
Is this me? Okay.
Sure.
The research question. Okay, well, we might have to take this part out. Well, which one of the
They're all different versions.
Okay, the research question. Will students who are treated like they're smarter actually achieve higher IQ scores? Will the teacher's expectancy of a student affect the student's IQ growth? And is there such thing as the self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah.
The Rosenthal and Jacobson study was the main landmark study that we researched for our project. And in the study, there were 3 classes of students in grades 1 through 6 at Oak School Elementary, which is located in a middle to lower class neighborhood in a large town. And in order to study these students, they used an IQ test that they tested them in the beginning of the school year, which was called the TOGA test. And the results of these test scores were given to the teachers, although they were randomized, and the students who had the higher scores were...
The students who had randomized scores were actually just as average as everybody else, but the teachers were told they did better on the test. And then at the end of the year, the TOGA tests were taken again to see how the teachers' expectations of these students affected their increase in IQ, and the students that had been falsely identified as bloomers had higher increases in IQ than the rest of the students.
This is just going over the same stuff.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
just to go more in depth into the study, Rosenthal and Jacobson participants, 3 classes, each of students grades 1 through 6 at Oak School Elementary in a lower middle class neighborhood in a large town. The materials and procedure, they used an IQ test. Test scores were given to the teachers. They put random students, telling the teachers that random students had higher tests on the IQ, higher scores on the IQ test than other students. And they gave that list to the teachers. And then at the end of the school year, the kids took the TOGA test again.
The psychological construct is the Pygmalion Effect, and it is the effect on a superior's expectations on a student's performance in class. It's measured through a change in the IQ scores with a teacher who thought their IQ was higher than the original score illustrated. So the Pygmalion Effect is like when there's a positive expectation, there's a positive result in performance. So the data, they went more in depth on the, I think it's the second one, or is it the first one?
It's the first one where they went more in depth.
Yeah. So that one goes more in depth on like the first and second graders because they saw a greater change in their IQ scores. But the independent variables is how the teacher treats the student, and then the dependent variable is the student IQ score. You could probably go more in depth about the graphs.
I don't know if that's 100%. Anyway, whatever. The experimental controls were that some of the students who took the TOGA test, but were not randomly selected to have high scores, so just their regular scores on the test. These students didn't receive any excess behavior from teachers. They were treated as normal students because they were not identified as bloomers. And then the scores taken at the beginning of the year are the control. They're the original scores, whereas at the end of the year, it can show different amounts of change depending on who was identified as a bloomer and who was not. Oh wait, this is going backwards now. I can't see what it says. I think this one's correct. Yeah.
This study is a landmark study because it applies to all aspects of life. And a quote from Rosenthal says that the expectations of psychological researchers, classroom teachers, judges in the courtroom, business executives, and healthcare providers can unintentionally affect the responses of their research participants, pupils, jurors, employees, and patients.
Okay. Some criticisms of Rosenthal's original experiment is that it was only done on grade school children and it was only done at one school. The results that he talked about most often were really only the results of the first and second graders because the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders didn't see a whole lot of change. And it was a small sample size because it was only at one school.
So I can talk about
Okay.
it's like the first and second graders, if you go back to it. You can talk about that more. The reason he went more in depth for the first and second graders is because, like she said, there was like more change in their IQ scores than the rest. And in his report, he said that younger children are most likely more malleable. So the expectancy of the teacher and how they treat the students when they're younger is more has more of an effect on them than the older students. And then the younger students also have less of a reputation at the school than the older students that have been there longer. So the teacher of the older students might already think that the student is either good or bad. So they already have a reputation for themselves.
So we found a modern investigation of academic expectations to kind of see if this is still true today. They did a student math achievement study. It was at a school in Germany, and it was kind of like the IQ test, but they focused just on math. It was a little bit of an older age group, fifth graders, and sample size of 1,289 students in Germany with 73 teachers. The children were tested 2 times a year. They took a test once halfway through the year and once at the end of the year. Since they took the test halfway through the year, though, the teachers knew the students. They knew what to expect, like if they were high achievers or not. And they had previous expectations before taking the first math test, which could have affected the results if they thought that their kids would do better because they were high achievers, or if they thought they would do worse because they were not high achievers. So the research concluded that the Pygmalion effects were found at the individual level for both achievement outcomes. So the Pygmalion effect is that if you have a positive expectancy, you'll have a positive outcome. So the teachers expected their high achievers to do well, and they did. The opposite of the Pygmalion effect is the Golem effect, and so if they expected their low achievers to do bad on the math test, then they would. Second, multi-level mediation analyses show that teacher expectancy effects were partly mediated by student self-concept, and teachers' average expectancy effects at the class level were found to be non-significant when students' prior achievement was controlled. So basically it's saying the students were a little bit older in the second study than they were in the landmark study, which means that teacher effects were there but not as prevalent as they were with younger kids because their brains aren't as malleable and don't believe everything that authoritative figures say to be like 100% true like they do when they're younger. Younger students have a less well-established reputation in the school, and teachers' expectations would have a heavier weight on the kid if they were younger. So that's why it still showed that the Pygmalion effect is true in this sense, but younger students are affected more.
Do I play the video?
Well, we should probably talk about it first.
So to promote well-being, the study is saying like to have when you have a positive expectation, you have positive results, and then negative expectation produces negative results. So like having the positive mindset will allow success to follow. So like we said, it kind of is in all aspects of life, like what you expect of yourself even. And now we have a video to promote.
I think it's clicked and clicked. Oh, dang. Nope. I did that wrong.
This is Min Inspirations. Today's topic, the Pygmalion Effect. Who's people? It's not people. Pygmalion, in Ovid's Metamorphoses, was a sculptor who created this beautiful ivory sculpture of a woman. He was so enamored with this work that he said, "Gods, please turn this woman into a real beautiful, real living person." And they did. So they got married and lived happily ever after. That's the Pygmalion Effect, setting your expectation on something and then having it come true. Rosenthal and Jacobson, in studies that were done years ago in an elementary school, basically took or had elementary school students take an intelligence test. Once the results were in, they randomly selected 20% of those students and bundled them up and put them in the classroom. To the teacher, they said, "Hey, these are high-performing students. They're going to blossom intellectually later this year." Well, 8 months later, they took those intelligence tests again, different tests, of course, among the entire population. And what they found is the students in that classroom way outperformed the rest of the class population, incredibly so. So the Pygmalion Effect basically says your performance is determined by your expectation. Positive expectations, positive performance. Negative expectation, negative performance. So how can you use this in your life? What about in your team at work? If you're a leader, how do you look at your salespeople, or your operations people, or your production people at your house? What do you do? How do you look at your spouse and your children? Can they perform wonderfully? Do you expect that? What about when you walk outside for the day? What expectations have you set? I say, set them positively. Thanks for tuning in. Make today great, and we'll see you next time.
close. It's not closing.
Hit escape.
Do we read the quiz questions? Okay.
Number 1 on our quiz.
We're gonna have the kids, everyone in the class, take out a piece of paper and answer them individually.
Yes.
So
So we're going to take a piece of paper out. Okay, which of the following is a prediction that directly or indirectly causes itself to become true due to positive feedback between belief and behavior?
is it A, the self-fulfilling prophecy, B, the experimenter expectancy effect, or C, the cognitive effect?
Done.
Should we say the answer?
No.
Okay.
What is the Pygmalion effect? A, negative expectations lead to negative performance. B, negative expectations lead to positive performance. C, positive expectations lead to negative performance. Or D, positive expectations lead to positive performance.
And number 3, what age groups showed the highest sensitivity to the Pygmalion effect in the Rosenthal experiment? A, preschoolers, B, 1st and 2nd graders, C, 3rd and 4th graders, or D, 5th and 6th graders.
Yay.
Thanks for watching.
Think positively for the midterm and you're going to do great.
And here are our references.
Okay.
Wow.
Positivity is key.